The crash did not sound real. It sounded like the sky itself had ripped open above our house. One violent explosion of metal and splintering wood, and then the entire garage wall collapsed inward like paper. The floor shook under my feet. Dust filled the air. For a split second, everything went silent, the kind of silence that feels wrong, like the world forgot how to breathe. I ran toward the hallway, heart hammering, expecting fire, an accident, anything, but what I saw froze the blood in my veins. A white truck sat buried halfway inside my garage, engine still growling, headlights cutting through the smoke. On the side, in bold black letters, were the words HOA Enforcement. Then the doors opened. Two men stepped out slowly, calmly, like they had arrived exactly where they meant to be. No panic. No confusion. Each held a baton, tapping it lightly against their palms, scanning my house like predators studying prey. One of them smiled, not friendly, not human, cold and certain. I grabbed my phone. No signal. Rachel tried the landline. Dead. Completely dead. That was the moment it hit me. This was not a crash. Not a mistake. This was planned. Someone powerful had just declared war on my home. Behind me, I heard footsteps. I turned, and my 13-year-old son Ethan walked forward, calm, silent, eyes steady. No fear, no hesitation. And in that moment I knew this was only the beginning. I had no idea how far this war was going to go, or what it would cost us. If you want to hear more true stories like this, make sure you hit that subscribe button to HOA Update, and tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? Before that day, before the crash, before the fear, life here was exactly what I had worked for. My name is Daniel Cross. I did not move here for luxury or status. I moved here for peace. No crowded streets, no noise, no control, just a quiet home where my family could breathe. Our property sat just outside the boundary of any homeowners association. That mattered to me. Freedom mattered to me. No committees telling me what color my door should be. No strangers deciding how I should live inside my own walls. Rachel understood that better than anyone. My wife is calm in ways I am not. The kind of person who sees problems forming long before they explode. Smart, patient, strategic. When I react, she calculates. When I worry, she studies. And most of the time, she is right. Our son Ethan, he is not like most 13-year-olds. Quiet, observant. He notices things adults miss. Sometimes I used to joke he watched the world like a detective instead of a kid. Back then, it felt harmless. Now I know it was something more. For a long time, everything was peaceful. Mornings were slow. Evenings were quiet. The neighborhood was friendly enough, waves across fences, short conversations at mailboxes, nothing complicated. No threats, no fear. Just ordinary life. But about a mile away sat Silver Ridge Estates. That place looked perfect from the outside. Clean streets, trimmed lawns, perfect houses lined like soldiers. But behind that perfection lived something else. Control, power, and a woman named Linda Harrow. I first heard her name in casual conversation. A neighbor mentioned her with a strange tone. Not respect, not exactly fear, but something close. Linda Harrow ran Silver Ridge like a ruler, not a president. She enforced rules aggressively, fined people for tiny violations, pushed boundaries wherever she could. People said she hated losing control more than anything. At first, Silver Ridge had nothing to do with me. Their HOA had no authority over my property. Legally, clearly, permanently, my home was outside their jurisdiction. End of story. Or so I thought. The first letter arrived on a quiet Tuesday morning. Clean envelope, official looking. Inside, a violation notice from Silver Ridge Estates HOA. It listed problems that made no sense. Mailbox-style violation, unauthorized landscaping, exterior color non-compliance. It read like someone had copied rules from another world and pasted my name onto them. I laughed at first, thought it was a mistake. Rachel did not laugh. She read it twice, slowly, carefully. Then she said something that stayed with me. This is not a mistake. I checked the property records that same day. Clear boundaries, no HOA covenant, no legal authority, nothing. I wrote a formal response, attached documents, rejected their claim completely, and mailed it back. That should have ended everything. Instead, it started something. A week later, a dark SUV drove slowly past our house. Not once, 3 times. No plates I recognized, windows tinted too dark. I told myself it was nothing. Then came the second letter. Stronger language, demanding compliance, referencing Community Expansion Authority. Still illegal, still nonsense. I ignored it, but small things began changing. One neighbor who used to wave stopped looking my direction. Another ended conversations quickly. One even crossed the street when Rachel approached. At first I thought it was coincidence. Then Rachel said quietly, "They are being told something about us." The trucks started appearing next, white trucks. No clear markings, driving slow, watching the property, sometimes stopping at a distance like they were studying the house. That was when unease replaced peace. Rachel noticed everything. The routes, the timing, the repetition. She began locking doors earlier, checking windows twice, watching the road longer than usual. One night, she said something that chilled me. "They are not trying to scare us randomly, they are preparing." I still did not want to believe it. I wanted logic, paperwork, rules, normal problems. Not intimidation, not fear. Then the third letter arrived, thicker envelope, red stamp across the front. Inside, one single page. No friendly tone, no explanation, no mistake, just one line. Compliance required, final enforcement pending. I read it twice. Rachel did not say anything, but in that silence we both understood. Something bad was coming. They did not knock politely. They walked onto my property like it already belonged to them. It was late morning when the white truck rolled up the driveway. No emergency lights, no hesitation, just confidence. Two men stepped out wearing black polos with a silver badge stitched on the chest, East Silver Ridge Enforcement Division. That name alone told me everything. There was no such division. The taller one moved first. Broad shoulders, shaved head, thick jaw. He carried a clipboard in one hand and the kind of posture that said he enjoyed confrontation. This was Victor Kane. Behind him trailed a thinner man with restless eyes and a forced expression of authority. That was Paul Ricks. He looked like someone playing a role he did not fully understand. Victor did not introduce himself. He simply started walking toward my front porch. I stepped outside before he reached the door. "You're trespassing," I said calmly. Victor looked past me at the house like he was inspecting damage. "Exterior paint non-compliant," he muttered while scribbling something down. "Mailbox-style violation. Landscaping irregularities." I stared at him. "You have no authority here." Paul cleared his throat and read from the clipboard. "Silver Ridge Estates has initiated community boundary expansion. Your property falls within enforcement radius." "That is not how property law works," Rachel said firmly as she stepped beside me. Victor's eyes shifted to her, slow, assessing, irritated. "Ma'am, compliance avoids escalation." Escalation. That word hung in the air like smoke. They began listing absurd violations one after another. My vegetable garden was non-uniform. My fence posts were aesthetic disruptions. Even the color of my front door, navy blue, was labeled a violation under their community harmony standard. None of it applied. None of it existed. Rachel challenged each claim with calm precision. She quoted property boundaries, cited county records, explained that no covenant bound us to Silver Ridge. Victor did not argue facts. He ignored them. "Failure to comply," he said flatly, "may result in forced correction." "Correction of what?" I demanded. He stepped closer. Close enough that I could smell stale coffee on his breath. "Property seizure is a legal option under expansion enforcement." That was the first time anger overpowered disbelief. "You think you can just take someone's house?" I said. Paul shifted nervously but kept writing. Victor did not blink. "You should have thought about that before rejecting authority." Authority. The arrogance of that word told me this was not confusion. It was intimidation. They walked around the property without permission, taking photos, measuring distances, pretending to document violations that did not exist. Rachel whispered to me, "Record everything." So I did. I took out my phone and began filming openly. Victor noticed immediately. His smile disappeared. "You don't want to make this adversarial," he warned. "It already is," I replied. That was the first open line drawn. After they left, the letters came faster. Formal violation notices. Late penalties added for non-payment of fines I never agreed to. Administrative processing fees. Non-cooperation surcharges. The numbers grew absurd. Then came certified mail threatening lien placement. Lien placement. They were building a paper war to justify something bigger. Rachel stopped sleeping deeply after that. Every small sound outside made her check the window. Ethan asked questions we tried not to answer fully, but he saw the tension. He always did. Within 2 weeks, harassment escalated again. Another truck parked across the street for hours at a time. A drone flew low once over our backyard. I filed reports. Nothing concrete enough for police action. "Civil matter," they said. Victor returned twice more. Each time, more aggressive. Each time speaking less and implying more. On the third visit, he delivered a thick envelope by hand. "Final notice," he said. Inside were multiple violation summaries stacked together. Fines multiplied. Threat of foreclosure proceedings initiated under Emergency Compliance Authority. The paperwork was crafted to look official, intimidating, heavy with legal phrasing designed to overwhelm. Rachel read it carefully. Their manufacturing justification, she said quietly. I felt something shift in me that day. It was no longer about mailbox paint or garden rows. This was about dominance. They wanted submission. And when I refused again, formally in writing, the retaliation came immediately. The following afternoon, another certified envelope arrived. Inside were 5 separate violation notices dated the same day, each one escalating the penalty, each one referencing legal action, each one ending with the same sentence: failure to comply will result in forced enforcement under HOA authority. I stood in the kitchen holding the stack of papers, feeling the weight of something far larger than fines. This was not bureaucracy. This was a campaign, and for the first time, I realized they were not bluffing. After the letters, everything changed. The pressure stopped pretending to be legal. It became personal. The first sign was the inspections. Not normal visits, not scheduled notices, silent walkthroughs around my property while I was home. I would look out the window and see a white truck parked just far enough to avoid confrontation. Victor Kane stepping out, circling slowly, taking photos like he was documenting a crime scene. No permission, no conversation, just presence, just pressure. Then they started coming at night. The first time, I woke to a faint metallic sound outside, like something tapping against the siding. I checked the window and saw movement near the garage. 2 shadows, watching, not breaking in, not leaving, just testing, measuring, studying. The second night, they walked closer to the house. I could see Victor clearly this time, standing under the dim yard light, staring directly toward the living room window like he wanted us to know he was there. A silent message: "We can reach you, Rachel." Rachel stopped calling it harassment. "This is intimidation," she said quietly, and she was right. A week later, the power went out. Not the neighborhood, just our house. One second the lights were on, the next everything dropped into darkness. No storm, no outage reported. I stepped outside with a flashlight and saw the breaker box open, slightly, like someone had touched it. The power came back after a minute. Just long enough to send a warning. Rachel's voice was tight when she spoke. "They are testing how isolated we are." Neighbors began changing too. Conversations became shorter. Eyes avoided ours. One neighbor, who once chatted with Rachel every evening, whispered quickly one day before walking away. "They said helping you could bring violations to us." They were spreading fear. And it was working. Then came the confrontation with Rachel. I was inside reviewing the growing pile of violation notices when I heard voices outside. Sharp, tense, wrong. I stepped out and saw Paul Rick standing near the fence, clipboard in hand, arguing with Rachel. "You're obstructing enforcement," he said nervously but loudly, trying to sound powerful. "You are trespassing," Rachel replied, calm but firm. Paul stepped closer, too close, his voice rising. "Failure to cooperate could result in removal procedures." Removal. The word hit like a slap. Rachel did not step back, but I saw something flash in her eyes. Not fear, but realization. This had crossed a line. I stepped between them. "You're done here," I told him. Paul hesitated. Then Victor appeared behind him, silent as ever, watching the scene unfold. He did not shout. He did not threaten directly. He simply stared, and somehow that felt worse. "You are making this harder than necessary," Victor said. "No," I answered. "You are." For a long moment, nobody moved. Then they left without another word. But the message was clear. This was no longer paperwork. No longer technical disputes. No longer rules. This was intimidation. That night, Rachel locked every door twice. Ethan asked fewer questions, but watched more carefully than ever. The house felt smaller, heavier, like the walls themselves were listening. Sleep became shallow. Every sound mattered. Every shadow outside meant something. The pressure did not stop, it tightened. Then, the next afternoon, the final message arrived. Not a formal letter. Not certified mail. A plain envelope placed directly on our front step. No return address. Inside, one single sheet. Bold black text across the center. "Final enforcement tomorrow." No explanation. No signature. No options. I stood there holding the paper, feeling the weight of something inevitable. Rachel did not need to ask what it said. She already knew. And deep inside, so did I. Tomorrow, this would end. One way or another. That night, after the message arrived, "Final enforcement tomorrow," I sat at the kitchen table staring at the words until they blurred. It was not just a threat anymore. It was a deadline. Rachel closed the blinds before she sat across from me. Her face was calm, but not the calm of denial. the calm of someone who had already moved 3 steps ahead. "I didn't tell you everything," she said quietly. Those words cut through the fear like a blade. "What do you mean?" She reached into a folder I had seen before but never opened. Inside were printed emails, scanned property records, and a business card. "I spoke to an attorney 3 weeks ago." I stared at her. When the second letter came, she continued, "I knew something was wrong, so I contacted a property litigation specialist in the county. I sent him our deed, the boundary maps, everything." And, her eyes locked onto mine, "Silver Ridge Estates has zero jurisdiction over our property. None, not partial, not expansion authority, nothing. They cannot legally fine us, lien us, or enforce anything. Every notice they've sent is fraudulent." For a moment, the fear lifted, replaced by disbelief. "So they're bluffing?" I asked. Rachel shook her head slowly. "It's worse than that." She slid another document toward me, a case summary. Another homeowner, different street, same HOA. They had tried something similar 2 years ago. Aggressive notices, threats of seizure, manufactured violations. The homeowner had backed down and paid under pressure. "This is intimidation," Rachel said. "Systematic intimidation." My stomach tightened. "So they're running a scam?" "Not officially," she replied, "but they've been stretching authority, pressuring properties near their boundary. Most people don't fight back. They assume the paperwork is real." I felt anger replace fear, not explosive anger, but something colder. Controlled. "They think we'll cave," I said. "They think you won't understand the law," she corrected gently. "They think we'll panic." That was the moment something shifted. We were not trapped. We were targeted. And targeting leaves patterns. Rachel explained the rest. The attorney had advised documenting everything. No direct confrontation unless necessary. Gather proof. Record every interaction. If Silver Ridge crossed into criminal behavior, property damage, trespassing, harassment, it would no longer be a civil dispute. It would be a case. I leaned back, absorbing it all. "So tomorrow," I said. Rachel's voice was steady. "Tomorrow they expose themselves." We moved quickly after that. Cameras were installed that same night. Not just visible ones, hidden ones. Motion sensors along the driveway. Audio capture near the garage. Floodlights adjusted. Backup battery power checked. Ethan stood beside me the entire time. He did not ask childish questions. He did not complain about staying up late. He carried equipment carefully. Wired sensors exactly where I pointed. Double-check connections. At one point I told him to go inside. He looked at me and said something I will never forget. "If they're coming for our house, I'm not hiding." There was no fear in his voice, just clarity. That was when I realized he had been watching all of this quietly for weeks, processing it, understanding more than we gave him credit for. Rachel reviewed the attorney's instructions again. If they trespass, we document. If they threaten, we record. If they damage property, we call law enforcement immediately with evidence. "They want dominance," Rachel said softly. "They want fear to make you comply. But fear only works if you're alone." I looked around the kitchen. I was not alone. By midnight, everything was ready. The cameras were synced to cloud storage. Backup drives armed. Phone batteries charged. Emergency contacts pre-dialed. The attorney informed that enforcement had been threatened for tomorrow. And for the first time in weeks, the panic inside me cooled into something stronger. Resolve. I walked into the living room where Ethan was finishing wiring a sensor near the hallway. "You did good," I told him. He nodded once. "They're not real authority," he said. "They're bullies." Rachel stepped into the doorway. "And bullies," she said quietly, "don't expect resistance." I checked the final camera feed one more time. The driveway was empty. The night still. Tomorrow, they would come expecting submission. Instead, they would find documentation, evidence, witnesses, a trap built on their own arrogance. I stood there in the quiet house and felt something new. Not fear, not anxiety. Control. "They think we're weak," I said, looking at both of them, and for the first time since this began, I smiled slightly. "Tomorrow, we end this." By sunrise, the house felt different, not safer. Prepared. Every camera was live, every angle covered. The driveway, the garage breach, the side yard, the breaker box, even the mailbox they claimed violated some imaginary code. Motion alerts were calibrated, audio capture tested, cloud backup confirmed twice. I did not want a single blind spot. Rachel organized the documentation like a prosecutor preparing for trial. Every fake violation notice scanned and timestamped. Every threatening letter cataloged. Property records printed in duplicate. Boundary maps highlighted. The attorney's written confirmation of zero jurisdiction placed at the top of the stack. We were no longer reacting, we were building a case. The night before enforcement, I quietly contacted the county sheriff's office. I did not accuse Silver Ridge of crimes. I simply informed them that individuals claiming authority had threatened forced entry onto private property without legal standing. I referenced prior harassment and the possibility of property damage. The deputy on the phone listened carefully. Call immediately if they step onto your property again, he said, especially if they attempt entry. I also notified our attorney that escalation had been promised. He responded with one line, if they cross the boundary tomorrow, they expose themselves. That sentence stayed with me. Meanwhile, Silver Ridge prepared. We could see it in the traffic patterns. Two different trucks drove past our property repeatedly that afternoon. One paused near the corner as if waiting for instruction. Drones did not return, but I felt their absence like a held breath. They believed tomorrow would be decisive. So did we. Just after midnight, we got our first break. A motion alert triggered on the garage camera. I opened the feed. Victor Kane. He stood near the damaged garage entry from weeks earlier, the same one they had caused during inspection. Paul Rick stood a few feet behind him, holding a flashlight. Victor crouched near the lower frame and began prying at the weakened structure, not inspecting. Damaging. He applied force deliberately, snapping a support bracket that had been temporarily reinforced. The sound was sharp in the quiet night. Paul whispered something I could not hear clearly, but Victor responded with, "Make it look unstable." Rachel leaned over my shoulder. "They're manufacturing risk," she said. Victor stepped back and kicked the loose panel inward. The movement was aggressive, intentional, criminal. Every second was captured in high resolution. They left minutes later, unaware they had just crossed from intimidation into evidence. That small victory changed the energy inside the house. Not celebration, confirmation. They were not enforcing. They were sabotaging. I forwarded the footage to our attorney immediately. He replied within 10 minutes, preserve original files. Do not confront them. Let them act. Ethan watched the replay quietly. They think nobody sees them, he said. They think fear makes people blind, Rachel replied. We stayed awake most of the night. Not because we were scared, because tomorrow would not be random. It would be structured. They had announced enforcement. That meant witnesses. That meant presence. That meant confidence, which meant they would overreach. By early morning, I contacted the sheriff's office again, not hysterically, not urgently, calmly. I informed them that we had video evidence of trespass and property damage from individuals claiming HOA authority, and that enforcement had been threatened for today. The deputy's tone changed slightly. We'll be in the area, he said, not a promise. But enough. The house was silent by mid-morning. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that feels staged. I stood at the window watching the road. Rachel reviewed the evidence one last time. Ethan adjusted a camera angle slightly to eliminate glare. Everything was aligned. They believed they were walking into submission. They were walking into documentation. At 10:30 in the morning, a white truck turned the corner. Then another. My pulse slowed instead of racing. Rachel met my eyes. This is it, she said softly. Outside, doors opened. Boots hit gravel. Silver Ridge thought today was enforcement. They had no idea it was exposure. Tomorrow had been promised. And now, tomorrow was here. Both sides were ready. The engines were the first thing I heard. Low, heavy, deliberate, not passing traffic, not coincidence. Purpose. I watched through the front window as the same white enforcement truck rolled up the driveway, followed by a second vehicle that stopped near the curb like backup. The doors opened slowly. Victor Kane stepped out first, shoulders squared, posture calm, too calm. Paul Ricks followed, clutching his clipboard, scanning the house like he expected resistance. They were not here to talk. They were here to end it. Inside, the house was silent. Cameras recording, audio live, evidence ready. Rachel stood beside the hallway table, phone in hand, documents stacked. Ethan stood next to me, steady, focused, no trace of fear. Not a child in that moment. A witness. A defender. A defender. Victor walked straight to the front porch without knocking. Then came the first strike. The baton hit the door once, hard, sharp, deliberate. Final enforcement, Victor's voice echoed through the wood. Open voluntarily. I did not move. Rachel whispered, wait. The second strike came louder. Paul spoke next, reading mechanically. Failure to comply authorizes force correction under Silver Ridge authority. Authority. The lie sounded thinner now, weaker, but they believed it. Victor tried the handle. Locked. He stepped back and looked at the doorframe, measuring, calculating. Outside, the second truck's driver leaned against the hood, watching calmly like this was routine, like homes were supposed to surrender. Inside, Ethan spoke quietly. They think we're scared. I did not answer. Victor raised the baton again, this time aiming lower, toward the lock, not intimidation now, but entry. Rachel's voice was calm, controlled. Not yet. My heart was not racing anymore. The fear that once lived in my chest had burned away, replaced by something sharper, certainty. Victor struck the door again. Wood cracked slightly. Paul shifted nervously, glancing toward the driveway cameras. Too late to matter. Victor stepped back, preparing a stronger hit. Last chance, he said coldly, or we make a door. The sentence hung in the air, the same words from weeks ago, now real. Inside the house, nothing moved, no panic. No chaos, just timing. Victor raised the baton high and stepped forward. And in that exact moment, the moment they crossed from threat into action, I pressed the call button. The line opened instantly. County Sheriff's Office, the voice answered. This is Daniel Cross, I said calmly. Individuals claiming false HOA authority are attempting forced entry onto my property. Evidence recording live. Outside, Victor swung. The baton struck the door with full force, and the trap closed. The sound of sirens cut through the air before Victor could swing again. Not distant, not delayed. Close, fast, fast, real. Victor froze mid-motion. Paul turned sharply toward the road, panic flashing across his face for the first time since this began. The second truck's driver straightened, suddenly unsure, scanning the street like the situation had slipped out of his control. I opened the door, not in fear but in certainty. Red and blue lights washed across the driveway as two sheriff vehicles turned in hard, gravel crunching under their tires. Doors opened. Deputies stepped out with calm authority, not rushed, not confused, but ready. What's going on here? One deputy called firmly. Victor lowered his baton slowly, his confidence cracking. Enforcement action, he replied, forcing composure. Silver Ridge Estates Authority. Authority over what? The deputy asked. Our jurisdiction. He has none, I said clearly. Rachel stepped forward, handing over the document packet we had prepared. Property records, attorney statement, boundary confirmation, every page organized, every fact undeniable. Silver Ridge has no legal control over this property, she said calmly. The deputy flipped through the papers quickly, then looked at Victor. You want to explain why you're attempting forced entry onto private property? Victor opened his mouth, but before he could speak, Rachel held up her phone. Would you like the video? She asked. The deputy nodded. She played it. The screen showed everything. Victor and Paul trespassing at night, damaging the garage frame, threatening forced enforcement, claiming authority they did not possess, manufacturing violations. Every word recorded, every action clear. Victor's face changed. Not anger, not defiance, realization. The second deputy stepped forward. Sir, put the baton down. Victor hesitated. That was enough. Now. The baton dropped. Paul raised his hands immediately, panic replacing obedience. The driver near the second truck backed away slowly, muttering something under his breath. Then came the name. The deputy looked at the documents again. Silver Ridge Estates, Linda Harrow still president? Rachel nodded once. The deputy exhaled sharply. We've had complaints. That sentence hit harder than anything else. Victor tried once more. We were instructed. By someone who doesn't have authority, the deputy interrupted. Handcuffs clicked. Sharp. Final. Paul was detained next, trembling slightly, his clipboard falling onto the gravel, pages scattering like the false authority they had tried to project. The driver was questioned, then restrained as well. Lights flashed across the neighborhood now. Curtains shifted. Doors cracked open. Witnesses. The illusion of power collapsed in minutes. Rachel handed over the final piece, the attorney letter confirming fraudulent enforcement and prior intimidation reports connected to Silver Ridge. The deputy nodded grimly. We'll be contacting the county regarding Linda Harrow. Victor said nothing now. The certainty was gone, the control gone, the intimidation gone. Just consequences. As they were led toward the patrol vehicles, Victor glanced once toward the house. Not threatening, not confident, defeated. The engine started again. But this time, not in dominance. In retreat, the patrol cars pulled away slowly, carrying the men who had tried to force fear into our home. The driveway fell silent. The flashing lights faded. The tension that had lived in our walls for weeks finally began to release. Rachel exhaled softly beside me. Ethan stood quietly watching the road until the last light disappeared. The war was over, but the aftermath was just beginning. The silence after the sirens left felt unreal. For weeks, fear had lived in every corner of this house, in the walls, in the shadows, in the sound of every passing engine. And now it was gone, not slowly, not uncertainly, gone like a storm that had finally burned itself out. But consequences do not end when the noise fades. Within days, the truth about Silver Ridge Estates began to surface. The county opened an investigation. Evidence we provided, recordings, documents, threats, property damage, revealed a pattern far larger than just our home. Other complaints surfaced. Other homeowners came forward. Stories of intimidation, pressure, forced compliance built on fear rather than law. And at the center of it all was Linda Harrow. The woman who believed authority meant control now faced real authority, legal authority. She was removed from her position as HOA president within the week. Charges followed: fraud, harassment, unlawful enforcement practices. The organization she once ruled with intimidation began to fracture overnight. Without fear to hold it together, its power vanished. Silver Ridge Estates Enforcement Division, fake from the beginning, was dismantled permanently. And something unexpected happened next. The neighbors came back, not all at once, not loudly, but slowly, quietly, one by one. A wave from across the street, a brief apology at the mailbox, a conversation that lasted longer than before. Some admitted they had been warned to stay away from us. Others said they were afraid of receiving the same threats. Fear isolates. Truth reconnects. One evening, a neighbor I had not spoken to in weeks walked up and simply said, "You did what none of us thought possible," but I did not feel like a hero. I felt like a father who refused to surrender his home. Life returned to something close to peace after that. No trucks watching from the road, no letters in the mailbox stamped with threats, no footsteps outside at night. The house felt like ours again, not defended, not under pressure, just home, stronger than before. One quiet morning, weeks later, I stood by the window with a cup of coffee, watching the sunlight spread across the driveway where it had all happened. The same driveway where fear once stood, now empty, calm. Behind me, I heard movement. Ethan. He stepped into the room, no longer carrying the silent tension he once did. Still observant, still steady, but lighter now, the weight of uncertainty gone. I looked at him, really looked, and something settled inside me. He had not been a child in those moments. Not when the threats came. Not when fear tried to enter our home. He had stood beside us, calm, aware, unshaken, brave. Not reckless, not loud, quietly brave. And that realization meant more than any victory over Silver Ridge ever could. Because homes are not just walls and doors. They are the people who refuse to let fear inside. I took a slow breath and looked out across the peaceful street once more. No intimidation, no shadows, no false authority. Just safety, just home. And I knew, deep down, no one would ever threaten my family the same way again. If you want to hear more true stories like this, make sure you hit that subscribe button to HOA Update. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from?